Welcome back to Breakdown with Tim and Anne, where we have a breakdown about everything that is happening in the country, and then we break down what we think is important to talk about. My name is Anne Stott. I am your co-host, coming to you with
Tim McCarthy, co-host with Anne Stott of Breakdown with Tim and Anne. Hi, hi, Anne.
Hi, Tim. How are you?
As we like to say, we don't answer that question anymore.
Yeah.
But we do. We do.
Should we say, like, how bad are you? Like, how are you holding up? We say,
Yeah.
how are you holding up?
Yeah. When people ask me how I am now, I just say I'm living in the same world you are. And then we kind of go from there. Obviously, not everybody's living in the same world in the same way. So I want to acknowledge that there are degrees of horror, but this is not good, and it's not getting better. So there is that. Yeah, I mean, I think the shorthand for me in terms of like the state of affairs in my own kind of life. Someone asked me, "How's my health?" Actually, earlier today. So one of my friends said, "How's your health?" Because as you know, I've had some health stuff that I'm trying to nothing terrible, but some things that I've had to tend to, and my physical health is actually quite good. It's probably better than it's been in years. But the other stuff, the mental, spiritual, psychological health is not in the best place it's been, if I'm being honest. And so I'm trying to deal with that in a variety of ways. And I said to another friend the other day that I feel like simultaneously that things are closing in and also that things are slipping away. And as someone like me who is, likes to lean into whatever agency I can summon in any given moment. I'm not a control freak, but I like to be able to feel like I can determine the course of some events in my life to like have some say in how my life unfolds. That's a very unsettling combination of it closing in and slipping away. And I think the closing in piece, I think, was very specifically linked to as you know, a series of attacks in our community here in Provincetown in the last week and a half of people in two instances shouting homophobic and also racist slurs at people who live in town, some of whom we even know. And then in one instance, an actual physical attack where a gang of white men driving a Lexus with a Donald Trump for president sticker got out of the car and beat someone on the pavement of the road late at night as he was walking home alone. So that was something for me. I just felt like it's closing in for a long time, but like that very specifically, that sequence of events in our community, which is, not a perfect place by any means, but it is, and it has been historically a safe place for our community, feels tough. And then to feel like the agency's slipping away at the same time, that like these things are coming and they're happening and they're coming at a faster clip and closer to home, and we don't have any agency to stop it or to prevent it or to stop all of this from happening, the violence that's both rhetorical and physical, that feels like a really toxic combination. So that's kind of where I am. I know that's a pretty dark place to start, but that, we've always been honest with each other. So that's where I am. What's going on in your world?
Kind of, I mean, honestly, wrestling with all the same things. I think my trajectory is a little different, honestly. So we're recording this on Thursday, July 10th, between 4:00 and 5:30, because who knows what's going to happen right now while we're talking. That'll be major news. That'll,
Yes.
swipe away everything we've said, which is part of the problem with how we're living right now. But last week, I mean, as I said, we're calling, as I said to you, we are calling this show The Next Chapter, because last week to me really felt like the culmination of everything that Trump and the people around him have been wanting for so long, between that bill passing that's going to hurt and millions of people and kill some people, the military in Los Angeles, the SCOTUS decisions that give him more latitude to, send people from Vietnam to South Sudan. Like, I don't even, and then the creation of this detention center in Florida, which I'm not going to call by this like gleefully, cruelly cute name that the Republicans have given it so they can sell t-shirts about it. To actually, I have to say, this is big on my list, Paramount paying off Trump, which isn't even getting the news it should get because of all the other things. And then Netanyahu and Trump having their love fest. I felt, I feel like we've blasted through so many walls, and I don't know like how we we're never getting back. Like back is gone. Like back is gone. And we sort of knew that was going to be true, but now I just feel it very clearly. Like back isn't happening, like through to something else maybe. But I really spent last week like, okay, the reason Hitler was stopped was because he invaded other countries. So then there was war, right? Like if Hitler had just been doing Hitler.
Neighboring countries, right? He was trying to, eat up all of the neighboring countries and then create this kind of fascist, anti-Semitic, white nationalist utopia. Continent.
And, if Hitler had just been doing Hitler inside the boundaries of what everyone had agreed was Germany,
right?
IBM probably would have kept sending him the calculators for the concentration camps, and is Trump going to ultimately decide to invade Canada or invade Greenland? Like, is that really happening? Like, are we going to war? And also right now, he just wants the people he doesn't want here out. But like, is there a way that this particular form of mental illness, which I really think we're dealing with mental illness, like this kind of statism, like, does it ultimately want the next thing of like torturing all these people and containing them and killing them? Like, is that, like how far are we going to go? And I was really brought low. Like I felt very despairing and enraged last week. Actually, some video crossed one of my social media feeds with some musical duo, and they're like, "We're enraged all the time," like, but in this kind of numb, like wide-eyed way, like, and I was like, "Oh, that's
help, it's danger." Yeah, right.
Kind of. And then I did remember, which I told you at our lovely brunch. So, shout out for like connecting with humans in the real world,
and like real time, and hugging people and eating eggs and salad and things. Yeah.
Yes. That I got this realization that all of my feelings were a sign of my humanity and my compassion. Yeah. And then I could kind of like remember the Anne that contains the feelings. Like I did feel just sort of like flooded with the despair and the grief and the fear and the rage for a time. And then it was like, okay, right. Like, I am a person who cares and knows that the fate of all of us is bound to each other. I'm saying this so poorly. No. But you know what I mean? And these feelings are a result of being that person who knows these things. And that is ultimately good.
Yes.
And it doesn't change any of the realities, but it makes me better able to do something about them, hopefully.
Yeah. I appreciate that. I say all the time to my students in my communications class that, your emotions are not the enemy. Your emotions are the surest sign that you're still a human being. And because so often when people are trying to think about how to improve your public communication, particularly like public speaking, right? Emotion is often seen as something that like undermines the impact of the speech, right? That get emotional, that it'll unravel or you'll get off course or something. It's always positioned as something that's in the way or a challenge or even an enemy. And I always say, no, the emotion is the thing that is the connective tissue, right? That's why stories are so powerful. It's the connective tissue of our common humanity. Is that if you're feeling something and I'm feeling something, there's an opportunity there to connect. And so it's a good reminder. I mean, I'm not saying that I don't need that reminder all the time too. In fact, when you just said that, I was just like, yeah, that's right. That's one way to be able to like actually accept in some ways, at least the response to what is happening, not what is happening, but our responses, whether it's rage or whether it's sadness or what have you, whether it's kind of the exhilaration of being like activated to organize or to protest or something, like those are all feelings, and those are all, generative feelings in some ways. And there are a lot of people, I think, who are experiencing what you've just described and what I'm feeling too. And it's difficult. And I think it's not, I don't think it's healthy to pretend that we're not feeling this or to not name it. I know that there are people who are on the other side of the ledger from us in various ways who mock us for our feelings. And that will always be the case because there are enough people out there with sociopathic tendencies to tip the scale from time to time. But, I'm never going to apologize for feeling certain kinds of ways when I see people in pain. Like, I'm not going to apologize. Like, people are in pain or someone's struggling and that bothers me. Like, that's not my problem. Right? That's the problem lies with the people who are causing the pain. Right? That's like, we have to be super clear about that. Whether they're sadists or sociopaths or whatever else they are. It's interesting because I've gotten the opportunity. This is going to sound much more like a name drop than it is, but it's not for that purpose. But I've become, in the last year or two, friendly with the former New Zealand Prime Minister, Jacinda Ardern. And she just published a book about her kind of memoir of her time as prime minister. And she, in it, she talks a lot about the role of emotion and empathy in leadership and how important they are, and how so often, as Elon Musk said, right, empathy is the downfall of Western civilization. And she's like, no, it's the opposite of that. It's the only thing that will save us. And she often was criticized because she was a woman. She was the first female prime minister. She was young. She was pregnant when she was prime minister. And so, she and Benazir Bhutto are the only women in the history of the world who have been heads of state while pregnant. And she had to preside over COVID, and she had to preside over the mass shootings in the Muslim mosques in Christchurch, New Zealand. And so she writes about all of this, and she actually was part of an institute that I just launched at Harvard at the Graduate School of Education, the B.R.A.V.E. Institute. And she taught a session in person, taught a session with the participants on empathic leadership and compassionate communication. And she talked all about this, and it was so brilliant. And I find her to be just a total inspiration. And she's like every bit as cool and awesome in person as she is out in public. But she talks so eloquently about how important emotion is, and to lean in and to not apologize, and how oftentimes that's gendered, and that emotion is used to claim that certain people, right, women and people of color and queer people, are not fit for public life, or aren't fit for positions of power, aren't fit for leadership, and when in fact it's actually the very opposite. It's the fact that some of us are in touch with our emotions and do have an emotional intelligence and an emotional articulacy and eloquence that can save us in these times. And I think about that a lot. I think about the how male and how white, right, and how mad the Trump regime is. I mean, there are certainly women and people of color, and I think at least a gay person or two doing the bidding of this monster and this monstrosity. But and I think about like a Jacinda Ardern, right, as like in the same breath that I think about someone like Trump, and I'm like, I know what I want, and I know what
Absolutely.
I don't want. So
I just remember her doing those children's story hours
Yeah.
during COVID.
Yeah.
That's the leadership right there.
She had a press conference to assure the children of New Zealand that the Easter Bunny was still coming.
Brilliant.
Are you kidding me?
Brilliant.
And her speech in Christchurch 2 weeks after there was a mass shooting, a gunman went into 2 different mosques and slaughtered dozens of Muslim people during the call for prayer on a Friday, and of course the Muslim population, many of them were migrants, had more newly arrived to New Zealand and part of the diversity of that country, and so this was someone who was uncomfortable with that, which of course is animating a lot of what Trump and his people are doing here now. But she gives this speech 2 weeks after the mass shootings, and I teach it in my course. The way I got to her was because she was a fellow. She was a visiting fellow at Harvard, and I teach her speech in my class on compassionate communication and moral leadership and empathy. And so I had a chance to meet her and have coffee with her. And so I just asked her, I said, would you be willing to come speak to my students? Actually, today I'm teaching your speech and I'm teaching you. And would you be willing to pop into the Zoom room? This is for a virtual class. And she did. She just came to class. She popped into the Zoom room and spent an hour with my students. And my students were like, did Jacinda Ardern just Zoom in? And I was like, yep, she's here. And I didn't tell them. So it was a big surprise. And then she delighted in the surprise and everybody was glorious. And then she wrote and thanked me. And so we kind of have, and then I ultimately asked her to be part of my institute, because I was like, how cool would it be if she taught compassionate communication and empathetic leadership? That would be cool. And she said yes. And she came and did it right in person, live. The people were like, is this happening? It was pretty cool. But anyway, but the lessons she's teaching and modeling, frankly, when she was prime minister, are lessons we desperately need right now.
Desperately. And it just makes me think, and we didn't talk about talking about this, but thinking about Biden or Obama or Bill Clinton, how, Obama's a little different because there was so much racism against him, but there was a way their manliness was never in question, right? So then they got to show emotion.
Totally.
Clinton's thing was, I feel your pain, right? Remember, I feel your pain. That was a huge part. But if a woman got up and said, I feel your pain in this country,
for instance. Yeah.
It'd be all over. And Biden even more, the sort of Uncle Joe, pro-labor union, Scranton guy thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think one of the things I like the most about his presidency was his ability to talk about and channel grief when we were all feeling it during the pandemic, right? So then they get all these points for being bravely emotional, but it's within the context of their, manliness being fully established, right?
Yeah. And then you think about so many female leaders including Hillary Clinton, right, who have had to sort of masculinize themselves in some ways in order to be taken seriously as someone who could win a war or wage a war. It's always that. It's can you imagine if they won or waged a war? I'm how about we live in peace? How about we try that for a little while? But anyway, but and that moment where Hillary shed a tear, she got choked up and everybody's oh my God, she's human. And it was in the news cycle and she won New Hampshire because of that. It was it's just also so crazy. And
well, it's so true. And it actually ties into what we were talking about today, which is the violence of our culture, just this violence of our culture and how little space there is for, at this point, true human compassion to be expressed in our public discourse. And this, again, I keep calling it gleeful cruelty we see coming from the right, this excitement, and that the White House and DHS really think that they're going to win points and be popular by posting a meme of alligators with ice hats on. They really believe that that is like on brand and going to make their base happy. And the truth is, I think they're wrong. Like, I think it's making some of their base happy, but probably not enough. Like,
Yeah.
but
It's making
either way,
for sure.
what?
It's definitely making some of them happy.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
No question.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, this kind of embrace of cruelty that has always been part of Trump. And again, you know, there was a great meme the other day about like, you can't say you like him because he says what he thinks. And then whenever someone brings up something you like, say that's not what he really meant. Like you don't get that both ways.
That part. Yeah. Yeah.
And he's always been cruel. And it's always been part of the appeal for a certain percentage of his voters. Not all of his voters, but a certain percentage of his voters. And for the ones who don't like it, some of them, all of them are willing to vote for him regardless. But some of them actively don't like it and talk about that. And some of them are like, oh, well, whatever, you know, because they don't think they're going to be affected.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, the thing about Trump is it's all out there. It's not, I mean, he never says the quiet part quietly. He always says the quiet part out loud. He's an inveterate racist. He's a committed misogynist. He's a convicted rapist or, you know, adjudicated rapist. He's could not be more xenophobic. I mean, literally could not be more xenophobic. He's the most xenophobic president in the history of the United States, and that is saying something. And he is just, I mean, it's all there. It's all out there. So, you know, the people who are like claiming like, well, you know, I didn't know anything. I'm like, he's been saying this shit for years. Like, I mean, I knew when I was in high school in New York, reading the Daily News and the New York Post in Albany, New York, that Donald Trump was trash.
Yeah.
And that he was racist trash, and he was sexist trash, and he was xenophobic trash, and he was nouveau riche trash. And he's all of those things still. And he's always been a bully. And now he's got the bully pulpit. And that's our fault, period. That's our fault, not our fault, but our American fault. And, you know, that's just, and we have to reckon with that. And we're going to have to deal with the consequences of that forever. And the MAGA people who are going to lose their health care, and the MAGA people who are going to lose their hurricane and flood insurance, and their federal government response to hurricanes and floods and the climate catastrophe we're all living in, right? All the people that their SNAP rewards, their, you know, whatever it happens to be, right? Every single person in this country gets something in their life for less money because of the government than they would otherwise. That is just true. Every single one of us gets help from the federal government in some way. And, you know, some of his people are getting a lot of help from the government. Talk about welfare queens, right? And they're going to suffer. And some of them are going to die. And some of them are going to get deported. I mean, all these stories about the people who voted for him who are getting, you know, disappearing and getting deported. And they're like, oh my God, I can't believe this is happening. It's like, where were you? Like,
well, that's the thing, this unbelievable capacity we have for cognitive dissonance, which I guess we all have, but like,
Lord Jesus.
And yes, he promised never to cut Medicaid. So, you know, I guess if you think he's not a liar and an opportunist who'll do anything for his own personal gain, then you might have believed that. But you know, like there was that tweet going around by some woman who said, I voted for Trump to piss off liberals, but I'm a diabetic who relies on Medicaid for, you know, my insulin and my, like, they have kidney disease. And, you know, they're like, I'm going to die. Help me. And I don't have Schadenfreude. I don't have that, like, well, too bad for you kind of feeling. But I do have this incredulous, like, really, you're like dependent on the federal government for your life. And you, just to piss off liberals, put your own life on the line because you never thought it would affect you.
Never. That's right. That's exactly right. Yeah, no, it's crazy. The Department of Homeland Security today is evidently on social media. Someone just sent this to me, circulating. Someone who used to work in the State Department and the federal government. So this is not someone who's, you know, just circulating misinformation and conspiracy theory crap. The Department of Homeland Security, from their official account, is circulating a meme, an image of a skeleton deadlifting weights. And it says, my body is a machine that turns ICE funding into mass deportations. The Department of Homeland Security, which just got a windfall for ICE to be, ICE got a windfall from that bill that was just passed in Congress. So they're going to be I think more well-funded. ICE will be more well-funded than both the FBI and the CIA. Right. And then the Department of Homeland Security is out here bragging about how it's going to turn those billions and billions and billions of dollars in funding from this bill into mass deportations. Right. Because they don't want them here. But and the thing about that makes me insane is that they're both intentional about who they're targeting and indiscriminate in terms of who they're targeting, which means it's impossible to stop, because they're intentional about the fact that there are like specific people that they want out, right? They want Guatemalans and they want Mexicans, or they want these Vietnamese people, or they want, they're very specific sometimes.
Or Palestinian activists.
Or Palestinian activists, or certain kinds of international students from certain kinds of countries. Like they're very intentional, right, and specific, almost granular sometimes, and also like random, but it's like, wow, what did that group do to you? And so they're intentional, and yet they're indiscriminate, right? The people who are disappearing, the ICE raids, right? They're just like, well, you're black or brown, or you look like you might speak this language, or you look like you don't belong here, right? It's never white people that they're going to do that to, of course, but so it's both of those things, and the combination of being like intentional and indiscriminate as a like not just a policy but a practice of removing people from a country and disappearing people. The fact that we now have a verb in our lexicon called disappearing, that person was disappeared, right, is terrifying. But that's a sign of that is a sign of the madness that we're all living in, and the camps that it's a concentration camp that they are building in Florida with the alligators. And now there's a New York Times article today about people are traveling in their cars to go for hours from all over the Florida and the South to take selfies in front of this concentration camp. And the Department of Homeland Security is bragging about it on their official social media accounts. Right? I mean, the violence that is like all of the violence that's part of that is so terrifying. And then the other thing that I got to get this in, and then I'm going to shut up. But the fact that Trump met with the president of Liberia yesterday, and who is a black man, a black African, and he complimented him with this big gleeful smile on his face, complimented this man because he had, quote unquote, such good English, and then asked him if he studied somewhere, and then where he learned such good English. And it was at a university in Liberia, which is the country he now leads. But the thing about that for me was like, yes, it's totally offensive to be like, oh, your English is so good, right? I mean, there's so much packed and loaded in that kind of sentence, all sorts of assumptions and so forth, none of them good. But the thing for me as a historian who got his start writing about slavery and abolitionism in the United States is that the president of the United States has no idea that the country of Liberia was an American colony, that the American Colonization Society raised money to found in 1816 and 1817 to send free black people who were liberated from slavery back to Africa. Whether or not they came from that part of Africa didn't matter, right? And so they were like, black people who are free can't live in freedom in the United States, and black people and white people can't live together. So there was this whole scheme of colonization, African colonization, to send black people back to Africa. Liberia was the place that we created, we founded with our tax dollars in the 19th century. The capital of Liberia is Monrovia, named for James Monroe, the great architect of Manifest Destiny, who presided over the governmental creation of Liberia as a state. So Trump doesn't even know that.
Oh my God, are you kidding?
English is the official language of Liberia, in part because it goes back to the founding of the country, which was a pro-slavery, anti-Black project, right? To colonize this random part of Africa at the time, right? And basically send American citizens who were being denied their citizenship simply because they were Black, right, back to this place. So I was just like, and I know I watch the news differently because I know that story and I know that history and I've written about it. And the abolitionists, of course, starting with Black abolitionists, were completely opposed to what they called the colonization scheme as part of this larger Manifest Destiny project, which was, of course, part of the genocide of indigenous people. It was part of westward expansion. It was the early origin story of American empire. And Trump is sitting at the top of American empire right now, telling the president of Liberia that he's got such good English, and he doesn't even know he's sitting in that history. If anything, Trump needs African American studies. Like, you need diversity, equity, and inclusion training. If he took a course in 19th century African American history, he would actually know that he's sitting on the top of American empire and that the president of Liberia in the 21st century, of course, has such good English. But no, we have an idiot who's a madman sitting there insulting world leaders, ignorant of the history of his own fucking country. Oh my God.
It's maddening. It's
right?
maddening. Yeah, it's just there's so many of these examples now, which also gets to like the press just giving him a pass day in and day out. I mean, they wrote about this, but like every day he says something completely crazy and incompetent. And I mean, crazy and incompetent are like, the better end of what he does, if not offensive, violent, horrible, and it's just sort of like, yeah, that's who he is. And the truth is, I get it because the people who vote for him don't care.
No.
But then it's this incredible double standard that we've talked about, and I mean, obviously Joe Biden should have not run. Like, that is now clear.
Oh my God.
And he did a great disservice to the country and to his party, but like the hundreds of articles picking apart his exhaustion, his fatigue, his speech, his blah, blah, blah. And it's sort of like, oh yeah, well, that's what Trump does.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah, no, the inability for any institution in our society, whether it's media and journalism, or it's the rule of law in courts, or it's the Democratic Party in politics, or whatever, the inability of any one of our institutions, even when they try to hold him accountable for this is, I mean, he has 34 felony convictions and he's an adjudicated rapist, and he was reelected by more votes in 2024 than he was in 2016. And like, so if 34 felony counts in an adjudicated rape trial and settlements with all sorts of other women that he's, I'm sure, sexually assaulted, can't stop this, right? If the journalist, I mean, all of the investigative reporting, I mean, how many books are on shelves now? The shelves groan under the weight of books about Donald Trump. And I mean, you pick an institution, higher education, you pick an institution that, could hold him accountable in some way, in their own way, and yet he still rolls on.
Well, and part of the problem is that, I mean, a lot more people tried, I will say we are really getting a front row seat to how much heavy lifting all the people in his cabinet did last time. And it felt like they weren't doing enough, but clearly they were doing a lot because, I mean, he wasn't this prepared and he didn't have the Project 2025 people, he wasn't this prepared, but even saying that, like, they were putting up roadblocks at every turn, which was part of his frustration, right? Like, it was part of why he was so angry. And
part of why we have this current manifestation of a cabinet, which is just a whole bunch of sycophant yes people.
Yeah.
And who are deeply, deeply dumb and absolutely unqualified for their job and profoundly mediocre.
Yeah. But love him or gave him money or whatever.
Right.
But I mean, the institution that really never held him accountable was the Republican Party. Obviously, they're top of the list. But now we have all these other institutions. We have the law firms that were willing to cave, the universities that were willing to cave. And obviously we want to talk about Harvard, and the ways they have been fighting and the ways they've been caving. I don't know if you want to segue into that.
Well, we'll get there. I wanted to hear more from you about, because you really, and I hadn't thought about it before you said it, but it makes sense. It made intuitive sense to me that last week felt like the sort of end of the beginning, or the culmination of the 100 days plus the first phase of Trump 2.0. And it just feels like a sort of opening of a next chapter. So I'm wondering, that feels right to me. And when you said it, I was like, yeah. But what about last week, and what about, I mean, you mentioned a couple of things that happened, but like, why do you feel that? Why do you feel like, last week was kind of an inflection point or a transition or pivot point?
It's interesting because I was catching up on New Yorkers because I had a really busy spring like you did. And I read the April profile on John Thune, the Republican Senate Majority Leader, the week before last week, so 2 weeks ago. And it was just shocking to, because they interviewed a lot of Republicans for this story on him. And, and he's not a Trump loyalist. And they say the only reason he became majority leader was that the Senate votes for their majority leader anonymously. So nobody would be on record. Nobody would be worried about Trump blowback. And everybody was talking about what an honest guy he is. And, this story came out in April. So that means people were getting interviewed in February and March. How honest he is, how he'll be able to kind of like work with Trump and hold him to account. And all these Republicans, when they were asked, about Doge, which was like in the height of its destructive, parade through the federal government, stealing our information and shutting down vital programs and destabilizing others. When they were asked about whether or not the Senate is abdicating its own power and responsibility by not, checking Doge and Elon Musk, all of these Republicans talked about how they will assert their power in the future with the budget discussion, or they will show in the future that they are not letting go of their responsibilities of oversight, or, not absenting themselves from their governing responsibilities. So to read that and then the next week have them pass this bill.
Yeah.
And they're all lying to themselves about how much they're participating in this. I mean, I know they think all the little tweaks they made make it better, but it's not better.
No, better. Yeah.
In this bill, they essentially handed Trump almost everything he wanted. There was no substantive pushback about anything of any true import. They played a numbers game about who had to say no. Like Susan Collins wasn't going to get reelected if she voted for the bill, so they let her say no. They let 3 people say no.
Right.
And then everybody else was cut off, and so to like read that article about how these people are delusionally telling themselves that they will assert their power in the future, when their powers already was like being actively stripped from them day after day after day, with them doing nothing, saying nothing, taking no action. And then to have them pass this bill, all talking about the integrity of John Thune and, how he'll be able to work with Trump and rein him in. It's like, nobody's reining him in.
Nobody's reining him in. No one's even trying.
Nobody's reining him in. And then these SCOTUS decisions, like that SCOTUS could tell the Department of Homeland Security that they can send people who have no history with the continent of Africa, much less the country of Sudan, to Sudan. Like what, like how did they get there legally? Like, I know there are ways they've stopped them, but let's be clear, half the ways they've tried to stop them have been completely ignored. So the power of the court has already been stripped in so many ways, but then the power they're willing to legitimately hand him is so terrifying.
Yeah. I mean, they've given him, a partial presidential immunity, right? I mean, that came early, and then I mean, the last month of Supreme Court rulings is a horrorscape.
A horrorscape.
A horrorscape, and on so many levels about so many things. And I just, I mean, the way in which the one branch of the government, the Supreme Court, is emboldening and empowering another branch of the government, stripping actually some powers from the yet third branch of the government, right? I mean, to create, this isn't checks and balances, right? This is like creating exactly the kind of empowered, emboldened, unaccountable presidency that the founders, with all their, vision and fallibility as well, never wanted. I mean, the Supreme Court is handing this man an emboldened presidency and allowing it, which is the opposite of trying to rein him in or to stop him, right? They're doing things that I, at least from my interpretation, are unconstitutional. And of course, we do have some voices on the court who are still willing to say that. Thank God, Sonia Sotomayor and especially Ketanji Brown Jackson, who is not holding back. And I it's interesting because I went to college with Ketanji, now Judge Jackson, and I remember, you remember meeting her, and everybody says the same thing. Like, she was just, you meet some people and you're like, that person's going to be a very big deal. And she was one of those people. And she is, and she always has been very serious, absolutely brilliant. Right. But I'm surprised by how quickly she has become the sort of the dissent voice of the court. And how sharp and how direct and how smart she's been in conveying that very recently, obviously, in the most obvious ways. I mean, yesterday when that ruling came down, the 8-1 ruling, yet further emboldening Trump to do whatever the hell he wants, I said, please let the one be Ketanji. And it was, right? And then she had blistering dissent, and then she read one from the bench the other day, But I mean, Ketanji Brown Jackson is going to be very lonely for the rest of her career, because this court is stacked, and most of them are not going anywhere anytime soon.
Well, yeah, and I mean, I have a very hard time talking about the future of the country right now. Like, I have a very hard time talking about the 2026 midterms. I have a very hard time talking about the 2028 presidential election. I have, we're on the Cape, and Jamie Raskin, who I respect a lot, is doing a thing tomorrow. And I can't, I mean, I'm curious about what he has to say. And I'm way more curious about what he has to say than most other members of the Democratic Party right now. But I think we are in such unprecedented territory that, what the Supreme Court's going to be like in 15 years, like it's
right.
It is no longer certain that we will have a Supreme Court in 15 years, or that their decisions will mean anything. You know what I mean? So I just can't even get there. But yeah, the ways in which he's been handed power, the ways in which there have been so many people willing to roll over and open doors for him to do these things that are so blatantly wrong.
Yeah.
Just so blatantly wrong. And also to go against the will of the people. Like this bill is wildly unpopular.
Wildly unpopular.
Even with a lot of his base. And what's interesting to me is that we live in these different information silos. Like everybody says we live in these different information silos, and that's part of the problem. And it is part of the problem because there are all these conspiracy theories going around, and we were going to get into the Epstein one. But at the same time, clearly, when it hits them, some information gets through. Like the veterans are mad about veteran stuff. People are mad about the danger of Social Security. People are really mad about Medicare and Medicaid being cut. And people you wouldn't know
get deported.
What?
When they or their spouse get deported by ICE, right?
And even some people who voted for him, upset about Abrego Garcia or upset about, Mahmoud Khalil. Like somewhere this information is filtering through and they're very clear these things are wrong, right? So, which is a whole other, layer or nuance to this moment we're in psychologically in this country. But this bill is really unpopular and he doesn't care.
No. Well, none of them do.
None of them do. And they're not going to be able to, I don't know if they think they're just going to blame more things on immigrants and then win again, which, has worked for them.
Right.
So,
right. There'll always be trans people and immigrants to blame on or Black people or, whatever, or woke Marxist professors or, whatever. The clearest, the closest we get to that they care is the Murkowski-Collins deal, where Collins knew that it was so unpopular in Maine that she wouldn't get elected to a 500th term or whatever, how many times she's been, how long she's been useless in the Senate, but so she couldn't get reelected. So Murkowski, who hated the bill, who actually was very clear that she didn't want the bill, voted for the bill so that Susan Collins could vote against it. The closest we came to resistance is that. Right.
Well, yeah, and also they gave Murkowski some stuff for Alaskans, right?
Oh, right, of course. And the whole thing is craven, right? Because it's the only reason Susan Collins is voting against it is not on principle. It's because she thinks her people in Maine can't stand her anymore. And then Murkowski is like, oh my God, this is terrible. She does her hand wringing and all the I'm agonizing over this. And then she votes for it because she gets some stuff for her people in Alaska, which is going to make her happy. It's all so craven.
It's so craven. And then that moment, I saw that clip. I watch very little TV news, but I saw that clip where someone stopped her in the hall and said that Rand Paul told her that she got a bailout for Alaska. And she was clearly really pissed, really pissed that he had said that and that she'd been stopped in the hall with this question. She was like, I will always advocate for the people of my state. That's my job. Do I know, do I know that other people in this country will be not advantaged by this bill? Obviously she knows she can't say hurt, killed,
the pretzel language, right? It's Orwell. It's Orwell on display, right?
Yeah, not advantaged.
Yeah. Oh, right. Exactly.
So yeah, it just feels like a lot of precedent has been blown through and there is resistance. There are people protesting. There are people protesting every day in Los Angeles. There are Democrats speaking up, although I'm getting tired of speaking up. I really think I did a video about this a while ago after Brad Lander got detained. The day after Brad Lander got detained, every single representative from the Congress should have been at a court walking, some legal asylum seeker out of their appointment, every single one. And the fact, that they all were with him in spirit is not enough now. It's just not enough.
No, sorry. Or another speech in the floor of Congress. You got these people have to start putting their bodies in line. If their votes can't get the job done, then they have to start modeling examples of this, right? And I think about, the late John Lewis, right? Who's one of my great heroes, one of the great Americans of all time. He got arrested in civil disobedience at least a dozen times while he was a member of Congress.
Right.
Not just before but he was a great civil rights activist. But while he was a congressman, he got elected in multiple instances of civil disobedience because he was someone who understood that to do politics properly, one must have a moral conscience and therefore some non-negotiables. right? That means you have to do that. And I agree with you. I have great respect for Jamie Raskin. He's given some great speeches, and I think he's on the right side of history and a lot of stuff. But like, these people have all got to like step in front of ICE agents.
Yeah.
Right, because they've just funded them to the tune of $186 billion, or whatever it is, $156 billion, $186 billion. So, like, they've been part of that, whether they voted for it or not. Like, Congress is going to allocate money to supersize ICE.
Yeah.
And so, especially the Democrats who voted against it, right? Put your body on the line.
Put your body on the line.
And I'm like you. I'm sort of sick of it. Every time someone says to me, "Oh, we just need to get to the midterm elections," I'm like, "Oh, that's cute for you." Like, are we really talking about midterm elections right now, and like how we have to support Democratic candidates in midterm elections? Are you kidding me? Especially in light of the fact that David Hogg's been run out of the Democratic Party. David Hogg's like 27 years old, right? Just graduated from Harvard, undergrad, survivor of the Parkland shooting. And he was an officer in the DNC, right? He was going to be a leader in the.
He was number 2.
He was number 2 in the DNC, and had the gall to suggest that people who are reaching geriatric age might want to step aside and move over, and that in safe districts, younger people, more progressive people, new blood in Congress should run against them, should challenge them in the primaries, which is actually democracy. And the Democratic Party in a democracy, right, told a lie about David Hogg and then purged him from their ranks.
Oh, wait, what was the lie?
Well, the lie was that he was trying to challenge all incumbent Democrats, and that he was a wrecking ball that would lead to Republicans winning, close districts and this and the other. David Hogg never said that. David Hogg said, if you're 85 years old and you're not doing your job and you're in a safe district, we should run someone who's like 32 against you because we need new blood in Congress. That's what he was saying. Yeah. And one of the things that he was doing, the Democratic Party, because they're so closed ranks and so closed-minded, couldn't see that what David Hogg was trying to do was to, as a leader of his generation, as a moral leader and a very savvy political leader in his generation, he got Maxwell Frost, first Gen Z member of Congress. He was one of his campaign managers. He was trying to bring Gen Z to the Democratic Party. And the Democratic Party is bleeding young people. Young people hate the Democratic Party. Like none of my students want to be Democrats. They're all independents, right? They're all voting for, some of them are voting for third party people, which I think is a waste of a vote. That's another episode. But in this moment, but what the Democratic Party should have done is say, David, you make us nervous, but you're in leadership, and we respect that, and you are a representative of the next generation. The Democratic Party is struggling with young people under 30. We need you to bring Gen Z to the Democratic Party and keep them there. What resources do you need to do this, and what strategy do you think would most effective to accomplish that goal? That's what the head of the DNC should have said to David Hogg. Instead, they make up lies about him, and they run him out of the building, and now have turned him into an outside activist who is a leading spokesperson of his generation. So when the Democratic Party comes around in the midterm elections and talks about how a next presidential election, if we even have them, and says how hard it is to get the kids, and the kids don't like us, it's like, well, the kids don't like them because you told the kids to go fuck themselves.
Well, and this, different story.
I'm on fire.
No, I'm agreeing with you completely. We were going to go here, but this is related to a thing I want us to do a whole show on, which is this question of like, burn it down, not burn it down, because then we have the Democratic leadership kicking out David Hogg, sitting in DC, staring at their navel and focus grouping, like, how progressive or not progressive to be, and which social issues to talk about and which social issues not to talk about. And then we have Zoran Mamdani, like, on the ground making it happen, building a vibrant, principled, charismatic,
multiracial,
cross-class, multiracial,
generational,
untoppling, a dinosaur creep of the Democratic Party who had so much more money than he had. And they're like, oh, well, no, it's not that. That's not what we need.
No, we don't need that. We don't
need that. And it really, it just has to be. And I've always been, I guess, an apologist for the Democratic Party. I'm a registered independent. I always vote Democrat in the presidential elections, but like, it's got to be about the money and the power. Like, it just has to be. Like, at this point, and I'm done. I am done. Like, I
Oh,
am
yeah.
done.
And the texts, the urgent texts, and that we need your money, and I'm like, no, you're not getting a half pence from me.
Well, yeah, because we're staring at a burning house. Like, our house is literally burning down around us.
Right.
And they're like,
with the arsonist standing there taking selfies.
With what?
With the arsonist standing there taking selfies.
Right. And they're saying, give me money to help design a new house for next year.
Right.
It's
exactly.
like, no, the house is burning down right now, right in front of us.
Right. No, it's unreal. It's unreal. Yeah, it's brutal to watch, and
It's really brutal to watch, and it means we're rudderless, and there are millions of people who are willing to take to the street. We've now seen that twice. Like, I was really worried when they called the No Kings protest so soon after the hands off protest, because I know how hard it is to get people out on the street. And I was like, uh-oh. No, I mean, I didn't say this publicly because we have to do something. And so that's what was happening. And I was like, oh no, it's going to be like a quarter of the people that came out for hands off. And then that's going to feel deflating and demoralizing. And it wasn't, it was more people. It was more people.
Yeah. It was one of the largest days of civil protest, nonviolent civil protest in the history of the United States.
And I'm not keeping track of everybody, but even Bernie and AOC don't talk this way. Like, as real as they're being, and as much as I respect the work they're doing, and I'm not saying they're doing anything wrong. Like, all of these, like rallies in red states and connecting with people, I think it's incredible work. But the only elected official who I've heard say this, that we are going to need hundreds of thousands of people in the street, is Chris Murphy.
Yeah.
He's the only one I've heard actually.
Jasmine Crockett has said something to that effect as well. But yeah, you're right. I mean, the fact that we can only come up with a couple of names. No, absolutely. And also, like, they need to be in the streets with us, including Chris Murphy. Right? They need to be. They can't just show up at the pride parades. Like, as happy as I am to, dance with Elizabeth Warren in a rainbow feather boa every year, like that, that's fine. But they need to be, again, put your body on the line, right? And I mean, standing in front of an ICE agent is one way to put your body on the line. Engaging in acts of civil disobedience and getting arrested is another way to put your body on the line. And, it's actually less difficult to show up for a No Kings rally than it is to do either of those two things.
Absolutely.
And they could be doing all of these things, and then go back to Congress and give a speech about why you did what you did, and what you did, and we all need to do it, right? And that's part of it, and they just don't understand that, because that's just not, for most of them, it's just not in their DNA. These are people who get caught up in our electoral cycles, and the money in politics is grotesque. Elections, never end in this country, even though they may soon. And they just don't get it. And they're so unbelievably out of step. Right. And I think that the parties are out of step in different ways. I think that there, as you said, there's a lot more unpopularity certainly around this bill and around some things that Trump's doing. I mean, Marjorie Taylor Greene almost like blew a gasket the other day because of the bombing of Iran. And I was like, well, that I guess the clock is right 2 times a day. I was like, wait a second. Are Marjorie Taylor Greene and I both in an anti-war camp right now? Like,
and Tucker Carlson, right?
Exactly. I mean, we didn't, I'm not saying I'm aligned with either of them, but I was like, oh, wow, an anti-war voice from the Republican Party. Wow. And then I mean, it's not a real I don't mean to give Marjorie Taylor Greene any kind of moral, medal.
No, here's the thing. The reason she doesn't want us to bomb Iran is wrong.
Right.
The fact that she doesn't want to bomb Iran
is excellent.
Yeah. But you just did it. You segued to the thing we wanted to talk about, which is who would have thought that the two things that would get MAGA supporters the most vocally upset in the last 5 to 6 months are bombing Iran and the announcement that they're not going to release the Jeffrey Epstein files.
That's right. Yeah. And who, I mean, Jeffrey Epstein, the gift that keeps on giving, much like probably the herpes that he died with. But sorry, I had to say that. Sometimes you just got to lighten the mood with the herpes joke, you know?
You just got to go there with a little STD action.
STD, exactly. So we both have Jeffrey Epstein stories. So would you like to tell yours? Because yours is better than mine.
Sure, I will tell my Jeffrey Epstein story. I met Jeffrey Epstein okay, so I graduated from massage school. I went to massage school in the year of 96, like from January to December. And then I practiced massage like 97, 98, 99, 2000. So I would say in the late 90s, I was a young massage therapist taking referrals wherever I could get them. And I was given a referral to massage a woman on the Upper East Side. And I arrived at a mansion, one block off Central Park West. And I was shown in by staff and taken up in the elevator to the 3rd or 4th floor where the massage room was, which was bigger than my apartment in the East Village at the time.
Your young lesbian activism and massage therapy practice wasn't.
I know. You're like friendly lesbian adventure.
Apartment in Soho.
Yeah. And the massage room looked like a spa. There was a shower in it. There were like walls of products and towels. And then the client, this woman who was Ghislaine Maxwell or Ghislaine Maxwell, well, I never am quite sure which way I should say her name, walked in naked. And she got on the table. She didn't like linger naked, but she walked in naked, which was weird.
Weird. Yeah, weird.
And then she explained to me that she got a massage every day. And
also a little weird. And
yeah. And she had this was the 90s, no cell phones, right? She had a console by the massage table and she played her answering machine messages, which I now believe had been played like many, many times for a lot of people. And they were things like, darling, Mick just can't meet for dinner tonight. We'll have to reschedule for next week.
Mick, like Mick Jav?
I'm assuming.
Or Mitt Romney. Okay, so, okay.
No, Mick. Yeah.
I can't imagine Mitt Romney was in that scene, but anyway. Yeah. No.
So about 3/4 of the way through the massage, a man came in who at the time I would have said looked like Ralph Lauren, like urban, swarthy, well kept, right?
Yeah.
And he didn't knock or anything. He just walked in and he sat himself on like the opposite corner for me of the table. And he started rubbing Ghislaine's leg a little bit and making some jokes. And they were talking about like, oh, what time are we leaving for the blah, blah, blah. And I was 27. I was 26. I was cute, but I was like a little dyke. Like I had like crew cut hair. I was wearing a bomber jacket. I probably had a t-shirt and jeans on. Like I was not.
I'm imagining you in like combat boots, like giving a massage to this woman. Yeah. Right,
exactly. Doc Martens.
Doc Martens, right, exactly.
So I left, and I will say that I broke confidentiality, and I was really great about confidentiality, but it was so weird. And I had this part-time day job at a floral event design company where someone worked who had grown up on the Upper East Side and was keeping track of the who's who of the Upper East Side, which I was not. Right. And I was like, I have this weird experience. And he was like, oh, that's Ghislaine Maxwell. She's the daughter of Robert Maxwell, the owner of the New York Post. Yeah. And then a few weeks after that, I heard from the woman who had referred me, who I knew had also given her a massage. I was like, what is going on here? And she said, well, what I've heard is that they use massage as a way to find women to have orgies with.
But the woman who booked you with them?
She didn't know that until later.
Oh, okay. Ooh,
yeah, she heard later.
Like, girl.
I mean, the truth is she shouldn't have referred me because, yeah. Honestly, once you'd been there, no one should have been referring anyone.
I was gonna say,
legit massage therapists because it was too weird. So she shouldn't have booked me in the first place, but she didn't hear that news until later. And at the time I was like, ew, because of the power imbalance. Like no young woman who's a massage therapist has the resources that they're experiencing there. So there's like this inherent horrible power imbalance, but everybody's an adult. Okay. You know, and it wasn't until 20 years later. And it wasn't even when Jeffrey Epstein went down, because I had already known about him from the previous trial, and I just chose not to engage with the story again, because we all had to kind of make our choices about how much we were going to read about sexual assault and trafficking and rape and everything in the onslaught of the Me Too. It was when she came up for trial, and I saw her picture and her name so clearly in a headline, and I was like, hold up.
Wow.
And I realized that I'd given her this massage. And then I posted about it on Facebook, and I told the whole story of giving the massage. And then two of my friends who I was friends with from being massage therapists together were like, whoa. And they remembered that they'd done it too. And one of them had given her a massage, and then Ghislaine was going to book her for a second massage. And my friend was like, I'm not sure if I'm right for you, but I can recommend some other people. And she was like, recommend whoever you want, as long as they're women and they're younger than you.
Oh, right. So this isn't about the muscle relaxing.
No, has nothing to do with massage.
Yep.
And what I really am left with is like how sophisticated they were at what they were doing, because they saw me, they knew like I was not, like I wasn't a candidate, right? Like not only were they not interested in me, but like I was not going to go on their ride, right? But like if I really saw how if I'd been 5 years younger and less self-aware, I could have been very charmed and seduced by that scene, and found myself like a month later on a ranch in Arizona with no money, no access to a plane ticket, having no idea like when I really said I would go to Arizona, or having not being able to identify like when the boundaries had been crossed. You know what I mean? Like I could see how the whole thing could play out, and how predatory they were. Right. And that whatever she said, I mean, I was there. She was actively pimping for him.
Yeah. And that's so creepy. And,
really?
And of course, whenever I hear these stories, I'm like, and they call us the groomers?
I know.
Like, no, girl. Y'all got that. Yeah. It's, and then all of a sudden they find themselves on the Lolita Express with Alan Dershowitz, it's just what a night.
Well, and then also how they get, and this will segue into your story. Like they get legitimized over and over again because people get, seduced by the money, right? So even though, I mean, so many people had to know some percentage of what was going down, right? Not the whole percentage, not the whole story, whatever, but some of it. But then he gives $1 million to MIT, or he gives, whatever he gave to Harvard. And then it's like, oh, he's a philanthropist. I mean, and this is why, and this is a bit of a, sidebar, but, why Nan Goldin, worked so hard to make those museums give back that Sackler money and take the Sackler name like off of everything, because it glosses over the harm they're doing. The same thing with Jeffrey Epstein. It helps people like turn a blind eye, and
Yeah. So, well, I mean, I never met Jeffrey Epstein, or whatever her name is, Maxwell. But they have deep ties to Harvard. And he evidently, based on reporting the Crimson and other sources, Wall Street Journal and other sources have done, reportedly gave $9.1 million to Harvard between 1997, which would have been Neil Rudenstein's presidency, and 2007, which would have been the beginning of Drew Fowles' presidency and the beginning of the big Capitol campaign that she launched and successfully ran. That would also include, as we know, Larry Summers' presidency. So Jeffrey Epstein was giving money to Harvard for a decade over four different presidents. Derek Bok was the interim president between Larry Summers and Drew Faust, although I have a hard time believing that Derek Bok in 8 months or whatever he served in that time was like meeting with the Epstein regularly. But, nonetheless, right, this crosses 3 different presidencies. It's clear that Summers was most involved with him, that Summers had flown on the Lolita Express, which is, of course, his plane that he takes to all the islands. And a number of my colleagues have been on that plane, including legendarily Alan Dershowitz, which is what I made that comment earlier. Bill Clinton's flown on that plane. There are lots of nefarious people. One of the royals, I think, was on that plane for many times. And the planes, of course, were the places that like transported the Johns to the trafficked. The places where the trafficked women were forced to engage in all sorts of sexual and other kinds of activities. And so whether it was offshore or in places within the United States, but he gave all that money to Harvard. He was convicted in 2008, and that's when Harvard officially severed ties. That was Drew Faust, who was Harvard's first woman president. And then, but he still came to campus multiple times after that time. And during the time that he was that Harvard was accepting money when Larry Summers was president, it's now documented, right, that Larry Summers said to Epstein, if I can raise $1 million for my wife, his new wife at the time, Alyssa New, who's my colleague in the English department, she was launching this nonprofit that was going to bring like poetry to the people. I think it's called the Verse Foundation or something. And he said, if I could raise $1 million for Alyssa, like my life will be a lot better at home. And it was a chuckle, like this is all documented. And so he gave money to her. And then it came out later on that the money was, dirty money, literally dirty criminal money that he made in part on the trafficking of women. And so Alyssa New had to give the money back, and she gave the money back and reportedly donated more than she had gotten to at least one organization that combats sex trafficking. Right. And my colleague Alyssa New has an endowed chair. She's still teaching in the English department. Larry Summers was the president of Harvard. He has a university professorship. He still carries on and says whatever he wants to do and does whatever he wants to do at Harvard. Right. Alan Dershowitz retired, and other people that we know were on those planes are members of the faculty, training graduate students and all that stuff. So there's a whole Epstein thing to Harvard. He had keys and a swipe card. He had access to Harvard buildings during this period of time, not just, so, I mean, talk about the money, right, which gives you access, which allows you to establish your credentials. There are pictures of him wearing Harvard sweatshirts. He never went to Harvard. He has no connection to Harvard. The only connection to Harvard is the one that he received because he was a wealthy criminal sex trafficker, and Harvard welcomed him into the ranks because he had money, and Harvard will always take people's money. So that's my story about Jeffrey Epstein. And I
really think this all comes full circle because we brought this up because this is the other thing besides the bombing of Iran that has had a lot of vocal public pushback from MAGA supporters. There's a whole group of MAGA supporters, and I wasn't completely on this until this moment, who really believe that there are files that Jeffrey Epstein kept of clients who are heavy-hitting Democrats. Yeah. And if these files can be released, it will crush the Democratic Party and the Democratic donor base, the sort of upper elite Democratic donors, and really drain the swamp, right? And they were sure that Donald Trump was going to release these files. And then Pam Bondi was like, it's sitting on my desk. And then it turns out there is no client list. I mean, as someone on Pod Save America said the other day, they were like, the idea that Jeffrey Epstein, this very wealthy, unfortunately smart guy, if he did have clients, that he would write them all down on one piece of paper and leave it in the upper right-hand drawer of his desk and it would still survive to this day is actually pretty ridiculous. Well, leaving that aside, the thing that is again, the truth hiding in plain sight is that there is audio tape of Jeffrey Epstein saying Donald Trump was my closest friend for 10 years.
Of course.
And there is no doubt that he was at Jeffrey Epstein parties. We have pictures of him with like his hand on the thighs of young women, right?
At Epstein's parties.
And yet that, and this is where we get back to this mental illness, that does not, in the minds of MAGA supporters, Donald Trump supporters, disqualify Donald Trump from being president of the United States. But they want all the information to come out so that the Democrats will be ruined when they already have it right in front of their faces.
Right.
That he was thick as thieves in this whole scene. I mean, if the other cases weren't bad enough already, but clearly we're just dealing with mental illness. So we already have that he's deep in this scene. We have like audio of Jeffrey Epstein saying it. And now they are twisting themselves into pretzels to justify Donald Trump not releasing this information.
And it's so interesting because it gets back to what you said about Marjorie Taylor Greene and Iran, right? Why she doesn't want to bomb Iran is wrong. That she doesn't want to bomb Iran is right. They should, if these documents exist, release them and prosecute people to the fullest extent of the law. Like that demand is right. But the reason for doing it, because you think that there's some secret list of Democrats who are all getting blowjobs from sex trafficked women or whatever, engaging in non-consensual sexual activity in a trafficking ring, that's crazy, right? And yet I have no doubt, if I'm being honest, if there is a list, that there are Democrats on that list. There's no question.
Of course there are Democrats on that list. Of course there are powerful people who fund the Democratic Party on that list. Of course there are Republicans on that list. Like, of course.
Donald Trump wasn't a Republican until he ran for office, right? Like, these categories, like, what do they mean, right? In some ways, sometimes they're very meaningful, other ways they're not. But this whole idea, the other thing that's interesting about this is, and maybe it's just, this is my my really nerdy, like the nerdy particulars of my weird humanity. But two things strike me. As you said, there can't be a list. And, the weird thing is that there is actually precedent for like people engaging in criminal activity or activity that ultimately was deemed criminal, who do actually take careful lists, right? The slave traders kept the most accurate ledgers of the sales and trade of human beings. Right.
I don't want to in any way minimize the cruelty and slavery.
Oh, no.
But it was business.
But I'm also like if there are lists, it wouldn't entirely surprise me that there are, because some of these people really are audacious and meticulous in the way that they commit these crimes, precisely because they feel like they're immune to any kind of accountability. Like, and it wouldn't surprise me, given Maxwell and Epstein's kind of personality types, right, that they might think that they're above and beyond everything because they can do this. So I don't know. Who knows? I mean, we may never know. But another little detail about that is interesting is that Pam Bondi, one of her things when she was the Attorney General in Florida, because I actually do have a Pam Bondi story. I've been on a panel on trafficking with Pam Bondi when she was the Attorney General of Florida, because I'm the chair of the board of an organization that does work against modern slavery and human trafficking. And so I found myself, weirdly, don't ask the backstory on that, on this panel with Attorney General Bondi, and her whole shtick was how she was a warrior against sex trafficking. So this idea that this is on her desk and she'll like get to it at some point, but ain't gonna get to it, is gonna like bury this, is like also off-brand for her, because her whole thing in Florida was that like the one thing that she had that like Democrats could get with is the fact that she was, had a decent record against sex trafficking in Florida, which of course is like ground zero for sex trafficking in the United States. So,
but all of this, I mean, really, we should have called this episode like cognitive dissonance, right? Because the cognitive dissonance of Trump, that he could be best friends with Epstein for 10 years and still stoke this. I mean, again, he's all projection, right? He's all projection. Like, it's just all projection. Because the truth is, Pam Bondi, if there is a file and there are names, she opened it and he's all over it.
He's on it, right? He's like,
and then they have to like do something.
Yeah. Right, exactly.
And that we as a culture, it's interesting because everybody gets so enraged at the suburban white women who vote for Trump, and I get enraged at them too. Right. And I have a friend who's sometimes a deeper thinker than I am, my friend Soya, who's been organizing for decades. And what she said in 2016 was, let's talk about how normalized violence against women is in our country. Like, let's talk about the fact that for a lot of these women,
Yeah.
Trump's just like another day. Like, there's nothing
Yeah.
abnormal about him because they are steeped in misogynistic violence all the time.
He's like their husbands, only richer.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's and then he is the one person. He has many things that make him historic, but the one thing that I will never get over is that he's the one man who's defeated both of the women who have run to be president of the United States. There's only one person who's beaten both women, and it's him. And that is impossible to apprehend, understand, or accept.
Yeah, and yet it's very much our country, right? It's like,
yeah,
it's just very much this country, and some incredibly like regressive, cruel, violent thing we have at
Yeah.
our at the core of some of the people of this country.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe we end on that.
Do we end on that?
That high note. No, we won't end. We'll just. I think that deserves its own space.
Yeah.
And we can pick it
I
up.
think you're right.
Yeah.
I think you're right. And so here we are in the next chapter of unleashing this cruelty. And the problem is the people who have those feelings, who don't think it's going to come around to them, or they think it's going to be controlled, like the people who say, like, oh, well, it's only illegal immigrants who have to be worried. And it's like, that's not how this works.
No, it's
violence begets violence, cruelty begets cruelty.
Yeah. And it's closing in on all of us. And while it is closing in on all of us, the country that many of us knew and hoped we could improve is slipping away.
It is slipping away. On that note, I will say, I don't think I told you this. So I went to high school with Kelly Morrison, who now has Dean Phillips' seat for Minnesota. I also went to high school with Dean Phillips.
That's right. You did tell me this. Yeah.
Yeah. And she was on the list that the assassin had who murdered your former student. And she, this is a private conversation. Actually, just talked to my mom, and I don't know if I should say this, but I mean, it's, like we're going somewhere very, very scary, very, very quickly. And if we don't stop it, there's no going back anymore.
Yeah. No, I know. I mean, when I woke up that Saturday of the No Kings rally where we saw each other, I woke up to the news that Melissa Hortman, my former student and friend, was politically assassinated in her house.
Yeah.
And a political assassination of a former student was not on my bingo card for 2025, and yet here we are. And there was a very long list. Of course, now one of your friends was on it as well, and thank God they found him and stopped him before he could enact any more violence. But we're in that place, and I don't think that we can't downplay that or sugarcoat that or reframe it or find a silver lining in it. It's very, very, very bad, and we have to figure out how to resist it and then get out of this, because this is going nowhere good.
Yeah. Well, I know for me, even if we don't have the answers, just we two little people, talking to you about it helps me.
Yes. I never leave our time together feeling worse than I did when I came. I always feel better.
I'm glad to hear that. And I'm glad that we can speak what we think is really true, because part of the problem we have right now is this corporate media that needs to gloss and obfuscate and justify and entertain. And, that is not going to get us out of this. That is not going to protect anybody, and it is not going to get us out of this. So I'm glad that we are doing our best to tell the truth as we see it.
Yes. And we'll keep doing that. At least we have that.
At least we have that. And we're back in the saddle. We've both been very busy and distracted, but we're committed to coming back in here and maybe having some guests in the future.
Yep.
So there will be more soon if you're here with us now. And thanks for joining us. And we're going to set a schedule. We haven't set a schedule yet, but we are going to set a schedule.
We are absolutely. And in the meantime, everybody stay safe.
Indeed.
All right.